Welcome to the next level of using Notion as a tool. In past videos, we've taken a look at Notion and especially the Reptile Keeper and how to manage your week with the day-to-day to-do list. We've also talked about notes and how important notes really are in your day-to-day activities. Today, we're going to take the next step and talk about the animal tracker. And this is where Notion and especially the Reptile Keeper template is so important. In a follow-up video, we'll talk about the business tracker, but today we're going to talk about the animal tracker. If you have 1 animal or 10 animals or 100 animals or 1,000 animals, if you're keeping your information on notebooks or even spreadsheets, this is going to be so valuable to you. In Animal Tracker, you can keep a listing of all of your animals. If you're in breeding, you can keep a listing of the animal pairings matching this animal to that animal, as well as egg laying activity, hatching activity, and for me, the most important, your animal wish list. Let's go ahead and check out that animal list. This is a feature in Notion we haven't yet talked about, and it's called a database. It's just like a table in Excel or Google Sheets. As you can see, it has basic table properties, rows and columns. Each column contains specific information about your animals. Now, this database was preloaded by me, and you can use it as an example, or you can delete these records if you so wish. Let's go ahead and jump into one of these records and talk about what you can do with them. To open a record, simply go over to the first property and click open. That first record is opened up. You can scroll down to the next record. Let's scroll back to that first one. Each of these different rows now is a separate property of that CR01. You can see there's plenty of information about CR01, but we could also add more information later on. In this record, we can see that there's some date fields, text fields, number fields, links to images, and we also have what's called a selection field. Let's take a look at that real quick. If we go into gender, we can see that it's set up as a select field. That means if we click in the values of that field, we can see predefined values. We can easily change one of those values if we want, or we could add a value. Once you're done maintaining the record, simply click out of the record and back into the table. You can do many things with this table, like changing field sizes. You can do many things with this table, like changing property sizes. You can even move a property to the left if it's that important. You can change the name of a property, or even change the value of a property without going into the record. You can always see more of the table by scrolling to the right and left with the scroll bar at the bottom. Let's go ahead and add another record. Let's call this one CR03. Again, you can open the record up and make your changes here, or you can simply make your changes right on the record in this database. Let's go ahead and take a look at that record in the full view. Databases or tables in Notion are a little bit different than Excel or Google Sheets, but they're so easy to get used to and so easy to use in Notion, and the advantage in Notion is that you have everything in one place. Let's go back to our Reptile Keeper and let's take a look at another one of those tables. Again, in animal pairings, this is where you match up males and females to show you what's been bred for your breeding season. Here's a new feature. You can see the reference right here. This goes back to the animal listing to make sure that this is a valid animal ID. Let's add a new record. So we can come in here, we can select our animal. I hope I'm not selecting a male to a male. Let's put a name to this. And we have our new animal pairing record. Now, if you're breeding animals and you're pairing them up, hopefully you have egg laying activity. This is pretty straightforward. This lists your egg lay ID, the date that they were laid, the number of eggs, and the pairing ID. And again, this goes right back to the animal pairing database that we just talked about. And of course, if you have egg laying activity, you have animal hatchings. Let's take a look at one of our records here. Here's the hatch ID, the pairing ID, whether the animal is male, female, or unsexed. And again, as the animal matures and develops into a male or female, you can always come in and change this information. Some people like to grade their hatchlings. Here's the hatch date. This is a reference back to the lay ID, any morphs or traits, and here's a simple status of what has happened with that hatchling. If you noticed in our database of laying and also in our hatchings database, we have something called hatchings this year. This filters out only the current year. Have you ever had your eye on a specific species of animal or specific morph or trait of an animal, and you wanted to keep track of who's breeding those animals, their prices that they're usually selling them for, so that you can go back at a later date and purchase those animals? Well, Animal Wishlist is just for you. I use this personally all the time so I don't lose track of who's breeding what. Let's go ahead and go into one of these records. So here we're looking for a crested gecko. We can even put in here specific morphs or traits. We find that Supreme Gecko has some available, less than a year old. This is the date that they were last made available. Here's a price that they were selling them for. They were selling them as juveniles, and any notes that we want to keep, additional notes, we can certainly put here. And here's an available. Now, sometimes those animals will be sold, and we could put sold just to keep that record out there for future reference. Again, this is a really, really powerful way to keep this information so that you don't miss out on an animal that you've been looking for. So much information in this animal tracker. This was designed specifically for this reptile tracker template. And believe me, this is going to change in the future. We're going to keep adding more and more and more features. In our next video, we'll talk about the business tracker. These are basic databases that you can use for your business to keep track of information.